Coming up today, is beginner's luck a thing? How to hard launch a podcast, Mother Nature's big feelings this week, and a few other topics that are going to zipper merge their way into the conversation. Welcome to episode 2 of Authenticity FM. I'm Phil Corrali. I'm joined with my friends and co-hosts, Dr. Corey Spiegel and Mike Sable. We are thrilled to be back again with you after our launch this past week. The support we've received has been amazing, and the excitement around this effort has really been palpable. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in again to join us. Even despite our initial launch on every platform, it seemed, except Apple Podcasts. Anyone know why we took that approach? Anyone?
Is this where I go, hi, me, I'm the problem, it's me? Yeah, I don't do the whole Apple thing. And I have been savagely roasted by you two and like countless other people in my life. And guess what? It doesn't matter. I'm still not getting an Apple.
Well, thankfully, others of us took the mantle from you to get it launched on Apple Podcasts. And so we are now on, I can't even remember how many platforms, but there's a lot of them.
So we decided 4.
That's right.
YouTube, of course. Where do you go with video? Spotify, which is kind of our home that everything else connects to. We're on Amazon Music and Audible, and then Apple. But I'm gonna pull a point. Who sent you the instructions on how to get it onto Apple?
Now, you did, but I had looked it up before, and I felt like I did excellent work on behalf of the podcast. So
you did. So now you're both still managers. I live in this grand world of business. What have we been doing for the last 2 days when it comes to the podcast?
Well, enjoying seeing people engaging with it. We launched this on LinkedIn, really. That was it. We had barely talked about it with anybody before we cut our first episode. And I've loved seeing our friends and colleagues engaging with what we've put together.
So don't lie. How many times have you checked on the metrics?
Maybe a dozen an hour. I don't know. It's exciting. There's a lot to see.
So hold on, as the old person in the group here, and the person who doesn't do social media well, if at all, I have not done anything with it. I actually texted a few of my friends and colleagues because that's what I do. So I really appreciate how you can help the elderly among you get better, and so I appreciate it. Thanks,
Mike. You didn't do nothing. You reshared Corey's post, so that's,
I actually had
something.
I had to Google how to repost, so that was good.
Little button, bottom right.
Yeah,
we're gonna work on that with you off camera.
God help me, I'm just not that bright.
I also posted it to my personal Facebook page. I have a lot of friends in the profession, and I was just amazed to some degree on the comments and the support of it. So thank you everybody for watching and engaging with something that we really kind of thought up as an idea to hope to engage and talk about the things that are important to us. And we hope that they're going to be important to you and that you keep tuning in.
So speaking of social media comments, though, I will say my favorite one was on your Facebook post where someone we all know and adore called us her 3 favorite nerds. And I feel like that's the next t-shirt, right?
Local government nerds. Local government nerds. We're a special kind. So yes, agreed. I did love that one as well.
So I know we had talked offline, like we hard launched this. We hadn't talked to many people about it. We had done a couple sort of dry runs to figure out the technology because we are all Gen Xers and that is a barrier. But yeah, just to go straight to hard launch, I think there was a little bit of element of surprise, right? We talked in the first episode about there are some podcasts in our space, and we went straight to video. I think it's great, and I'm super excited. So yeah, to see all of the positive commentary on how great it is, how it's the right time, how people think the three of us together are kind of lightning in a bottle. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I got great feedback from friends that have watched it, and people are excited to see what's next. So I think we can do another one, and then probably a third one, and then we'll see where we go from there.
For sure. For sure.
We're going to test beginner's lookout right here, right now.
That's right. That's right. So it's been an interesting week as we think about launching a podcast. And Corey, this is something you and I have been talking about. One of the things that we've somewhat employed around the edges has been AI. And we're kind of dipping our toe into what that looks like and feels like, and how it relates to what we've been doing for this podcast and kind of the lead in and the work leading up to the launch. You're one of the better users of AI that I know. Just, I'm curious how you feel about it as it relates to what we're doing here.
So I think I have to confess, Mike used AI to help create the logo.
He did,
which was
he did.
super cool.
That
so
was going to be a special announcement later on because we were also proud of him.
Well, I got to contribute something, so that's
It was great. And then I sent it off to a professional designer, and they made it into proper artwork, so we can do lots of fun things with it. So for me, I will confess, AI wrote my LinkedIn post for the most part. I think, and as you and I were talking offline, Mike missed this part earlier, but you guys use ChatGPT. Falling in line with my defiance towards Apple, I do not lean into ChatGPT. I think it's great. I don't have any issues with it, but I actually use Perplexity for almost everything. And that started last year as I was doing research for my doctorate. And it just became the tool I got really comfortable with. And so I got really good with prompts. And, I think that's going to be really interesting for you guys to explore from the government perspective, right? Launching a private sector company and doing all sorts of digital and creative work. Like, AI is great. You admit what is AI and what isn't. I have an entire prompt log of the tone for my company. Like, this is who we are. This is what we do. Make sure everything connects back to that. And so even though I will natively write a bunch of stuff, I always filter it back through to make sure it's completely what I want it to be. But knowing that government moves maybe a little slower when it comes to kind of taking on these new technologies, and for good reason, sometimes that pace is intentional. I think we're going to get into a really, really interesting space on how it's going to make life a whole lot easier. Think about writing a section of code. Everybody's Googled stuff for years anyway. This is just the evolution of what Google was as we were becoming into our professional careers. And so I think we're at the tipping point of it's going to get cool. It's going to get dark too. I'm sure you guys have seen the videos where, I could turn you guys into anything I want using AI. And so how do we build the tools that prevent that, especially in the public sector? Like, think about everything that's going on in the world. It could get really weird when you make people say things that they didn't really say.
Yeah, I would say that I think you're right. I think government is sort of skeptical and maybe not using it as much as they can. I did play around, so I use Perplexity, Claude, and ChatGPT. And so I'll give you sort of real world local government examples. Whenever you need to do an RFP for anything, you do what all good city managers do. You call your friends and you say, hey, when's the last time you did one of these? They send you the file. You edit, copy, paste, rewrite, put it into some of your own language, and then you send it out. And that used to take, 2, 3, 4 hours. I Googled the most recent legal services RFP from a neighboring city. I pulled the PDF into ChatGPT and I said, please rewrite this as me, make these amendments, adjustments. 25 seconds later, I had a full RFP out and ready and able to go out into the field. So the productivity sort of capabilities are just off the charts. And I'm somebody who's I have more ideas than I have time to execute them. This is making me better at all of those things. So just, I think one of the things that we're going to have to get really good at, and I think the profession's going to have to get really good at, is sort of this architecture of prompts. And, your prompt needs to be a paragraph, maybe a paragraph and a half of tone, of specific words, of specific language, and then the follow-ups that come with it. And so, like I said, I'll take credit for the logo, and I probably went through 20 prompts to try to get at what that was about. And I hope people like it. And I hope people ultimately will buy a logoed shirt and wear it at the ICMA conference in Tampa. I'm not kidding. I think they
I
should
love
do
that
that.
idea. I love it. I love it.
But I do think there's a way for us to actually get better for the profession. And just embracing the power of productivity and of organizing thinking, because we're pretty good thinkers, but I'm maybe not the best at organizing my thoughts. And so that's where I think the real power of AI comes in. So, Phil?
As you were using your example, I was thinking of a conversation I just had yesterday with one of my staff, one of my team members, who is in the process of drafting an RFP and had done really good background work, pulled a bunch of RFPs, kind of found the things that were necessary from each of them, lumped them together, and then at that point dumped it into ChatGPT and said, hey, this is the subject matter that I'm creating an RFP for. What did I miss? What's not in here that should be? And he got 3 or 4 more things that it was able to pull and drop those into the RFP as we're ready to get that launched and out the door. And it's just such an interesting opportunity, I think, for us to speed things along. And yes, it can be a frightening component of what it is that, are we cheating, right? Are we doing what we're supposed to do or not doing what we're supposed to do? You have to responsibly use it. You have to thoughtfully use it. You have to make sure that it's accurate, right? That fact checking component. And as I think about it and how I use it myself, especially, I get questions from folks relative to LinkedIn and the presence that I have on that platform. And a lot of people are like, so how much of your stuff is AI? And I was like, not a whole lot, but maybe I guess more should be if you're thinking that it is. Like, it's an interesting thing for me to some degree. I have a hard time getting my tone into the prompt, right? And so what I will often do is write something and then drop it in and ask it to, upfit it a bit, make it a little bit better or a little bit stronger in one area or another. And it usually does an amazing job of keeping both my tone and what I have in mind. So, I'm evolving with it. I think it's an amazing tool. I think we'll talk more about it in subsequent podcasts. But I think it's just an issue today that either you're afraid of it or you're embracing it. I don't know that there's a lot of in between right now in local government. So I think we've got a lot to talk about with it.
So I was thinking about when I came up to your community and your team literally took pictures of the strategic planning work we had done. And as we're navigating, like right in that little couple hour window, they're plugging it in, it's making connections, it's synthesizing. It did a really fantastic time that would have probably taken several staff hours to do. And they just did it on the fly. And then we could integrate that work product as we went. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's some little tips, like if you get the premium versions and you can just take a picture of. So I love analog work, right? I love the flip charts and markers. I think there's real value in craftings and writing that stuff out. But then if you can take a picture of it and have it auto transcribe, and then say, can you organize this? I think that's great. I also worked in a community. They had a lot of that heretofore, that whereas languages in their resolutions, and it really felt like it was from the 1940s. And I literally just took one and I put it into ChatGPT and I said, could you use more modern language? And it was done. And so that, I think that you're right. There's endless possibilities. And what I don't want to see happen is where we put a lot of structure and a lot of rules and a lot of things to sort of put boundaries on it when we actually don't know what the capabilities are. So that's something my organization's wrestling with. But you're right, Corey, you do also have to be worried about sort of the dark side or the unintended consequences of it. But I'm excited for what's next.
Amazing stuff. So it's been a big week for weather. As we said in the intro, Mother Nature, she's got some feelings and she's showing them. And I don't mean to smile as I say that, because weather has caused an immense amount of pain and suffering across the country in all sorts of different places. It's not centered on the coast. It's not centered in the middle of the country. It's all over the place. And we're seeing that and feeling it and sending our well wishes to those communities, to our colleagues in those places who are dealing with unimaginable things, and doing so with just amazing skill and tenacity and care for the places that they are working. It is inspirational to me to see that work happening. And at the same time, I recognize, as I'm watching these videos and seeing these visible destruction, this visible destruction, where my head would be in those moments, right? What would I be doing as a village manager to support my community in that time of tragedy, that time of immense need and immediate immense need, right? You're not leading up to it. You don't have weeks to prepare. You're whatever you've got, whatever you've done, you're employing it right now, immediately, and for as long as necessary. So we look at these things, I think, in a very different lens, perhaps, than just the general public. We have to. That's our jobs. And I'm just curious, how you guys have witnessed and seen these things yourselves, and what feelings they bring up.
So I'll start. I mean, Phil, earlier this week, I texted you after the news of 5 inches in Chicago and said, is everything okay? BC had posted something this morning that there were 4 1,000-year floods in 4 different states, like in the past couple weeks. I mean, we're looking at a 2-week period, and Iowa will probably get added to that list after last night. My backyard was an entire river. The 100-foot storm easement did its work really, really well. But there are other parts of the community that woke up this morning evacuated, without homes, with their belongings completely damaged. I'm sure there are hundreds of vehicles that are flood damaged. And we all know, like, for me, Mother Nature's 2 most fearful weapons are fire and water. And we saw what fire did to California. It terrifies me, especially having lived in Arizona and Colorado. And having lived here in the Midwest next to the Mississippi, we all know what water looks like. And it's fast, it's furious, and you just can't stop it. Like, there is no stopping it once it's going. And so, to all the professionals, having been in that role the morning of a disaster, after a disaster, a few too many times at this point, it's not something you'd ever wish on someone. And the people, regardless of community or state right now, the blame is coming in from all sorts of angles, and that just hurts. It doesn't help anything when all that the people who are boots on the ground trying to help these communities navigate this horrific experience, they just want to help, and they want to have other people know how to help in a meaningful way. And I think for me, that's the sentiment I woke up with this morning, was, instead of watching the blame that just gets lobbed around, because that's what people do sometimes, like, thinking about, well, how could I help people? How do these residents, I had heard a story this morning of somebody who's like, can I put my trees out on the curb and will the city come get them? Right? There are these very transactional little things that people want to know what to do and how to plug in to help the people who need it right now.
Yeah, that's what you just described, Corey. That's the Mr. Rogers principle, right? Like, look for the helpers in a crisis. And we train for this, and we plan for this. We anticipate things that will go wrong and that we'll have to respond. And so we do tabletop exercises. We set up EOCs. We prepare. But when you hear, in my organization, when we heard about this, it was a moment to stop and think. I actually had a guy that I know. He actually stopped me. And he says, do you think something like that could ever happen here? And I had to stop and think, like, instead of referring to Texas, I said, I don't think as bad. And we do have good systems in place. But, we went back and said, what is our continuity of operations plan? What would we do in the event that we lost this section of the city, or if this was underwater? It's funny because normal people don't worry about that stuff, and we think about it all the time. And so, these events are tragic. And when you put into context a 1,000-year flood event, I don't think people can appreciate how devastating that is. A 100-year flood event is devastating, and it's 10 times worse. And so it is terrifying. I do appreciate our colleagues who are putting in a lot of long hours, and shout out to our public works crews. They love stuff like this. They get to bring out the big heavy equipment and get to work and help. So, but again, that requires thoughtful planning to get that equipment in place ahead of time, and all of those things. And I'll tell this story maybe another time, but I want to talk about government controls around purchases and what you do in a crisis. So stay tuned for that for listeners.
I think also just the magnitude of these disasters are hard to contemplate in a vacuum. And I saw something, and I'm gonna butcher this because I can't remember all of the specific the specific quantity of water, but they were trying to explain how much water fell in Central Texas. And it was essentially a number I had never heard of before because it's that big. It's 2 days worth of water flowing over Niagara Falls, falling in 90 to 120 minutes. And it's literally quintillions of gallons of water. It is, your brain has a hard time wrapping your head around it, right? How is that possible? And so as we think about our own communities and the things that we have to deal with, obviously not every situation or scenario is the same, but Mike, you hit it on the head, right? What happens if the thing that we are relying on to work doesn't work? And now we have to adjust. I had a very minor, very, very minor in the context of what we're talking about situation come up last week with the 4th of July parade. We had a unexpected natural gas leak in the parade staging area, and everybody's showing up, and this just happened. And now what do we do? And how do we adjust? And how do we have to do that? You pull everybody together, you put your brains to work, and you come up with a plan, right? You've got 60 minutes to figure this all out and adjust a whole lot of things. And yeah, it's going to be a little chaotic at first, but you get into the routine. And the way you do that is through muscle memory, training for it, planning for it, working through those tabletops, working through those exercises that we've all come to rely upon, and our teams have gotten so good at being able to act upon. So it just, again, our hearts go out to what everybody is dealing with in so many different parts of the country, our colleagues and our friends, their teams. This round-the-clock work that they are undertaking is just overwhelming in the moment, and it doesn't go away right away. These things they're going to be living with this for quite some time. So however we can continue to support them, I know we will.
So I have two kind of follow-ups to that, and one of them is a perfect segue off what you just said. I will say, when we faced incidents in this community, and it could have been law enforcement, it could have been, I mean, there've been no shortage here. Having a network of people you can call that have been through it or know somebody who's been through it. We talked about Kevin Bacon last time, that 2 degrees of separation. When you're in the middle of it and you're like, I'm not sure I know what to do right now. And everyone around you is like, yeah, didn't tabletop this one. And to be able to lean into your networks and find that person who's like, no, you need X, Y, and Z. If you do X, Y, and Z right now, that will buy you time to do all these things. And so I think we're going to talk about this. This will be a reoccurring theme, is the importance of networks in this profession, because everybody does care about it. And I think the more we can do to be there for each other is super important. And the other thing, I want to follow up with a comment that was in a group chat last night from somebody we all know and respect and adore. But she said this, and then I want you guys to kind of react to it. I look forward to a future on how we will collectively address the increase in disasters. Because while we myopically look at the community we serve, water, fire, these, they don't look at map boundaries. They go where Mother Nature wants them to go. And so there has to be some collective work on how we work with this, because engineering's great, but I think we all recognize that when Mother Nature lays down the law, she wins. And so how do we work together as communities, regions of states, and even nationally? And I think we saw that with some of the hurricanes in the Southeast last year, which were just tragic.
I think after 9/11, a lot of communities started talking differently about how their police and fire departments interact with one another. And one of the things that we did in Illinois at that time was really rethink regional mutual aid, right? How none of our organizations, our communities have the resources to deal with every scenario, right? We have to rely on others to help us through that. And we had this situation in my community last summer. We had a microburst blow through, 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes long, and 250 trees down. And my crews are great and they're amazing and they can do amazing things. But literally within an hour and a half of that storm coming through, I got 3 text messages from neighboring managers saying, "What can I send to help?" That's what you're talking about, Corey, right? That we're not individuals that are trying to work through every situation on our own. Not only are we relying on our teams, but we're relying on our neighbors and our colleagues and our friends who know what we're dealing with, because they have too, right? They've gone through it. And we have that responsibility to one another, either through mutual aid or through the individual outreach. I reached out to a good friend of mine this week for some advice, and he picked up the phone right away. "Hey, what's going on? What do you need?" And then sent me a text message 2 days later saying, "Hey, I've been thinking about you. You doing all right? Is there anything else I can help with?" That's what we have to do for each other, right? This is in these moments where these difficult situations come up, that awareness that somebody else is there to help is immense. So I know that didn't really say an exact answer to your point, but I think it's the foundations upon how we deal with major regional issues, is that we build these relationships and we rely upon them to get through it.
I'm going to just forecast maybe a future topic is how do you build these teams, or how do you build these networks? It ought to be maybe a full hour of our conversations, because I agree 100% that this is one of those things. The other layer that I'm going to add on to that, and this is as the levels above us continue to struggle with their state level, federal level, as long as there continues to be sort of this chatter around other things rather than direct service, it's actually going to fall upon us to do that. And so it's going to require sort of a different set of skills going forward for the local government managers, the local public works director, the local police fire chief. It's going to be more important for us to have strong relationships, strong connections, strong partnerships. And we're going to have to be the ones to build them, because we can't rely on our partners at other levels to do it. So it's going to fall to us. And so stay tuned. The job's going to get just a little bit harder.
So this is a little bit of what we're hoping to do right on the regular, which is to kind of dive into some of these issues, to talk a little bit about it. Corey, you had thrown out something to me yesterday about some of like our own experiences and what's happened in the past, and what maybe we're thinking about as we're seeing other major incidents take place. And one thing that jumped to my mind was something that happened 13 years ago on the 4th of July. I happened to be on my honeymoon when this took place, but the morning of the 4th of July, 2012, there was a train derailment outside, immediately adjacent to the community that I was working with at the time, which was the village of Northbrook. The train derailment actually took place in the village of Glenview, and we were in the middle of one of the hottest periods of time in a long time. Daytime temperatures were, well above 100 degrees. And a fully loaded coal train was traveling over a bridge, and the tracks bowed, the train derailed, and it's a huge train full of coal. And as it derailed, it was slamming itself into a bridge. And eventually, the rules of physics took over, and that bridge collapsed, and took most of that coal with it. The train fell into it. It was a major disaster, just as the fire department was lining up for the 4th of July parade that morning. And tragically, it was discovered the next day that there was a car that had been under that bridge when it fell. And a couple who was traveling to meet family for the holiday was killed. So that was a major component of what our communities were dealing with. And I was away. I wasn't there. I didn't get back until the next week. And what I got back to was an amazing set of circumstances that now had to play out, right? The railroads are a unique organization in our country. They have a tremendous amount of authority, more so than any of us knew at the time. The bridge that had fallen essentially had cut off a portion of my community and of Glenview, which is the neighboring community. And as they cleared it, they immediately figured out how to create a temporary track, and they rebuilt the track. And they did that by essentially creating a embankment and covered that road and said, sorry, we're going to cover it for as long as we need to until we can figure out what to rebuild. And in the process, we were dealing with a series of businesses, community needs. There were residents that didn't have a way to effectively get out. It was literally adding 15 to 20 minutes for people to get to the same place that they otherwise would be able to arrive at. So we were dealing with the railroads and how to handle that intergovernmental cooperation, two communities trying to figure out how these things can happen. The broader outreach, the loss of these individuals, what did that mean for the community? How could this happen, right? To Corey, your point before, the blame game. This was a 100-plus-year-old bridge. Had it been well maintained, who needed to deal with that? Whose responsibility? This week brought back a lot of that memory for me of standing in public meetings without answers, standing in front of very concerned residents without answers, trying to extend support to businesses that were saying, we can't get deliveries anymore, and we have manufacturing operations that have to continue, and trying to come up with solutions. None of that was possible if we didn't work together and think through what the best thing was going to be for that moment. My community didn't always get the benefit of those best things, nor did the community next door. And that stuff is also the hard side of this, right? Is it a win-loss, or is it we just have to collectively get through it? And that isn't always the way it works. Politics finds its way into that conversation. We had our share of shared joint board meetings during that time. And it came crashing back to me this week, thinking about that and the way we had to respond. I'm sure there are things that you guys have in mind too, that at this time of year particularly, it seems like summer's a busy time, where these sorts of things have endeared themselves in your memories.
So it's fascinating. You talked about that being 13 years ago. And you're right. I had in my notes. So on July 10th, 5 years ago, a little girl went missing in our community. Her name was Briasia. And it turns into a not happy ending story. Unfortunately, she was murdered. And what was fascinating to me in the moment was how everything just came together. And the community had done these searches and organized themselves. And like everything was about finding that little girl. And 5 years. It's 5 years now, right? And so I reached out to one of the lead police officers to check in, because the hard part, I think the hard part of this profession, and I say that public service widely, is that those hard moments never leave you. I mean, for me, I sat inside what felt like an FBI episode for over a week. We had units from all over the upper Midwest. We had specialty teams. We had, national missing persons. It was unreal to see the level of support used towards finding this little girl. And ultimately, we had to rely on the justice system to get justice for her. And I don't think her family's ever going to feel like justice was served. I, as a mother, wouldn't, for sure. But those moments stay, right? Like the tragedy and the fight or flight that goes into that response, because that's just what happens. That's what you sign up for, whether it's public works or management or public safety. But I think what we need to be better about, and I hope what we can help shine a light on, is that there are reverberations from those experiences. And Mike, I know Minnesota's had those. 2020 was a really rough year, I think, for a lot of us. But how do you build resilience in a positive way, not in a survivalist mentality, but how do you build it in a way that we can come together years later, even though those scars cut deep? At least mine sure do.
Yeah. I'm going to say, so I live about 2 miles away from George Floyd Square, so we could do a whole episode on sort of what it's like to be in curfew and in lockdown in your own city. But not today. We're not going to do that. But I want to say, each of you said something that I want to touch on. Phil, you talked about an example of like you had an issue and you reached out, and then that manager reached back out to you. And Corey, you just sent a text to a police officer from an event from 5 years ago to check in on them. That is literally one of the first steps, is to make sure that you're getting your outreach and connection. So for people listening on the podcast, send a text to a friend and a colleague and say, hey, I was just thinking about you. Hope you're doing well. Need anything, or do you want to get together? It is the human relationship and the human connection. And that's where you build. Because you're right, these tragedies live with us. They're like, you can go back and sometimes they're old war stories and you bond over them. And that has gone on for generations and hundreds of years in that bonding through tragedy. And so it also requires people to do the outreach. So text a colleague, text a friend. If you're old enough, do a Facebook post. If you're young enough, make yourself a TikTok, which... Sorry to transition to a little bit lighter pieces, but as someone who does none of those things, I can appreciate when other people do it. But outreach and touch points and human connection is what's needed. And so you guys, I appreciate that you model that, you do that. That's why you are leaders in this work, and that's why I'm so proud to be part of this. So there.
And Mike, I think that's a really good way for us to start talking about how you're afraid of social media, and it's a place of fear and anxiety for you, right? Or is it just because you're the oldest of the three?
Well, so
is that what it is?
I am the oldest. I also don't think I'm from this generation. I think if you would have dropped me in 1947, I would have just like fit right in as an adult in the 40s and 50s. I would have just crushed it.
So do we get to call you Boomer then?
My son says "Okay, Boomer" to me quite frequently, and so, but it's not enough. I'm not afraid of it. But it's just one of those things that it doesn't feel authentically me to do. It feels forced. And I do have a LinkedIn account because you're professionally obligated to do it. But that's why I only repost. I don't actually connect with people. But
that's not true. You did a really great post a few weeks ago after the events in your community.
Yeah. So just for podcast folks who are viewers, there was our former speaker emerita was murdered in her home by somebody pretending to be a police officer. Melissa Hortman was an amazing leader. She actually was the state legislator of the community that I worked in previously, and you could text her at any time and with anything, and she was always your biggest champion. And then I made the mistake of going on Twitter or X or whatever it's called, and the haters and the trolls were all trying to speculate. And I actually I got fed up, and I went onto LinkedIn and I said, listen, the only appropriate response in a tragedy is to say, oh my God, that's awful. I hope nobody else was hurt. That applies to the flooding in Texas. That applies to the wildfires in California. That applies in every situation. Oh my God, that's awful. I hope no one else was hurt. Start there, and then we can get better. And then, we can respond. Then we can make people whole. Then we can deal with the tragedy and the loss and try to rebuild. But I do think that element of humanity is something that we'll bring to the world, I hope. So I wasn't planning on sharing that story, so thanks for prompting it. I just had a lot of feelings and emotions pop up.
I would say, in my experience with social media, there aren't enough voices like that in times when we need those voices to be there. And I think that is where we do have the opportunity to leverage these platforms to say not everything has to be the haters and the trolls, right? We can apply some level of practical realities, humanity to things. Now, that's not always easy, and I don't rose-colored glasses the fact that there are entire structures built around elevating certain voices and decelerating others. But LinkedIn, thankfully, remains one of those places where I think we were able to moderate some of that negative response. And I have found personally just amazing connections with folks who I never would have ever met, but for a connection through a social media platform like LinkedIn. And many of those individuals I've actually never physically met. We talked a little bit about that among the three of us last time, that we've really in person only probably met each other a handful and a half times. I've never met some of these folks, but I send them text messages and they reach out back to me and say, "Hey, how's it going? I'm concerned about you. I'm thinking about you." So we have created through these platforms the opportunity for those connections, and I'm grateful that they exist. Now, I do have a TikTok account. I really don't use it very much at all. But yeah, I'm curious about what the kids are doing these days. And Mike, I think it's important for me to mention, when I had my first real job after my internship, the village manager, Bob Franz is his name. He's an amazing mentor to me. I learned more from Bob than almost anyone in my career. And he used to describe me as the oldest 65-year-old he'd ever met. And I was 24 at the time. So I get it, right? There's something to having an old soul. There's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it.
So, Phil, I know you and I had talked at some point this week about a decision I had made about a year and a half ago, and I had really locked down my social media, not LinkedIn. I view that as very separate as well. But I mean, hundreds of people. I made a decision to kind of, I'll call it, go into a cave. And for me, that was a decision I needed to make, and I'm glad I did. And I hope we get to talk about kind of riding the waves and those high and low moments, because at some point the attacks get so visceral that you just have to kind of wallflower it in. And facing my fear monster, I said that to you this week, I'm facing my fear monster. And so for us to go straight to video, hard launch, hi, here I am again, was, I think, a really important moment for me as I navigated my own grief cycle, was to say, you know what? Your voice is not going to win. I'm going to do the things I love for a profession I love with the people I respect. And if you have things you want to say about it, great. That's First Amendment's a thing in this country. You do it. But I'm not going to let that hurt what I hope is going to help people in this profession through whatever means we go on this journey together.
Hear, hear. Well said.
Cheers.
For sure. Love that. Cheers. That's right.
Okay, so I do have to make a comment about, so Phil, you drink Diet Coke. I drink Diet Coke. Corey, you also drink Diet Coke. Maybe not today, but we have them.
It's not in the cup, but I have one.
We have them in 3 different formats. I have
We
the
sure
little
do.
baby. I have the little baby 7-ouncer. You've got the 12
The
ouncer.
traditional 12, and then Corey's going big.
I don't know what any of that means, but I'm sure that some psychologist somewhere will be able to sort of analyze us and stretch this thing out. But I do appreciate all of the varying sizes of Diet Coke. I just don't know what it means yet. So
It's very Goldilocks.
And
whatever
it
that means.
all happened very, very unplanned, which is the fascinating part as well.
well, and I do that's actually why I think we get along, because we just have these sort of little quirks, little interests that align, and that's why it kind of works. So this is I just was noticing my Diet Coke trend across the screen.
It's a good trend. It's, I don't know what I'd do without it, honestly. There are a few managers here in Illinois who share a similar reliance, if you will. And we joke about it, and people joke about it, but you know what? Hey, it keeps me going. Keeps me going.
I had a connection of that because you both had talked about drinking coffee this morning.
Uh-huh.
And Mike, when you were off screen, Phil and I had talked about how I have this aversion to the smell of coffee and therefore don't drink it at all. So you two drink coffee. You are the Apple people. My diehard Diet Dew is in that cup, and I will be a Samsung person until I'm not.
That's fine. We still like you.
It's incredible insight into Corey Spiegel,
That's
Dr. Corey Spiegel.
That's right.
Weird synchronicities, they just show up sometimes.
All right, it's been a week, right? We've had a lot of things that are going on. What's sort of one takeaway from last week of your lives that sort of stands out that is interesting, or something you like, either something you experienced or something you saw, something you read, something about the last week that maybe we ought to be able to share with the 6 other people who watch this podcast? I'm joking. It's more than that.
It's more than that.
Yeah.
We need to work on your goal setting skills.
I would say one thing as it relates to this podcast has been the real positive outreach I've gotten from folks about it, which I didn't know what to expect, honestly. But I think I sent Corey a picture of it this week. I was driving to work and I popped this podcast up on my Apple Podcast app and was streaming it through my car. And it's like, this is a really surreal thing. And it seems like people are excited about it. And Corey said something about imposter syndrome a little while ago. We're going to talk about that at some point. I have a lot of it. It's a constant companion. We're buddies. It wraps itself around me a lot. And this week was a good week for imposter syndrome for me, from the standpoint of feeling like this is something that is going to resonate. This is something that's going to be fun. People are like, when do you have time to do this? I said, it's not about having the time. It's about being with these folks and talking about these things relative to a profession that I could not love more. I'm going to find the time. We're going to find that time, and we are. But that's really been my takeaway this week.
So mine's similar, and I'm back to we could all get shrunk at some point. Like, the fact that we hard launched is fascinating, and I think we will reflect on that. It's like we kept this big secret and just went out into the world, and to have people react, as Phil said, was, for me, a surprise and like the most happy, wonderful way. But I also launched a company, right? So if there was ever a week in my life where I turned the metaphorical chapter, turned the page, and starting something new, this past week was it. And you guys have been and are a big part of that. And I am so grateful.
Well, so I'm going to tease the audience. We're going to have to go. We're going to learn all about what you do and are doing next at our next episode. For me, this was one of those things like I think I'm just along for the ride, right? I don't actually know what I'm doing. I don't know if it actually is going to work. But you just like, again, I said this before, right? You find people that you like and respect and just want to hang out with them some more. So as the elder of the group, I'm just along for the ride. Hopefully it's going to be fun and interesting. I had a couple of people text me and were like, wow, that was really great. And I think that for me was all the validation. It was just, we're putting ourselves out there in a way that is not typical, but I think necessary.
So what people don't know, because they don't get to see the back end of our handy dandy software, is he says he doesn't know what he's doing, yet AI creates like way more shorts of him than Phil and I combined.
Yeah,
Like
right.
it's 2-to-1 in a 1-to-2 ratio. So
Talk about imposter syndrome.
I'm gonna call shenanigans.
Yeah, for sure. What you also haven't all had the opportunity to see was we were supposed to start recording a lot earlier this morning, and then Mike broke all his stuff. So, maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. He's just lucky. And that's okay. Luck is important.
All is well.
Luck is important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good thing for him, the camera loves him, apparently.
That's just because he's chatty. It's fine. It's fine.
Good stuff. All right. We have officially jumped the shark on this one. So
I think it's a good time for us to say that's it for episode 2. Thanks for hanging with us again. We look forward to continuing the conversations and continuing to engage with you. Send us your ideas, thoughts, and other things through whatever platform you're watching or listening to this. And thanks again for giving us an opportunity to do this.